start by, and Steve can certainly jump in, explaining kind of what this is, because I know we have some new counselors, and just to talk a little bit about the process. So a workshop is a little bit different than a regular meeting. It does allow us to have, casual isn't the right word, but more informal conversations. But at the same time, we do have to follow the some basic rules of procedure so that we're not having conversations over each other. So obviously, one person speaking at a time, we can, like, I'll call on people who, as you have questions, just, that everyone has a chance to talk before, have a chance to add comments or ask questions. So.
Yeah, just to add, this is a chance to review the budget. It's not fair to department heads sometimes if you're asking other questions during this time. Sometimes it feels like some department heads it turns into open question and answer the department heads. So they're here to focus on the budget. That's what the information they have before them today. While they could probably get most of the information about their operations, they may not have all for other questions that they have. So we're really just focusing on the budget today. And we're also, just to be cognizant of time, because we did schedule individuals' time periods, and we tend to go quicker, but just to realize that they are coming in on a Saturday as well. So that's it.
And with that in mind, feel free, like, everyone should have your questions answered, and so make sure that you have the opportunity to ask any questions. I think this is probably the most important part of our job, is to review and then eventually approve the budget. So so make sure, and we don't have a lot of chances to do that. So we really, we have this meeting, and sometimes we have a second meeting, and then that's it. So so there's not a ton of time. So this is your opportunity to ask all your questions, budget, and if you have any questions about the process. So with that,
We'll start with recreation. Okay. For those who don't know, it's on page 58, Recreation General Fund. Amy Gigande, the Recreation Director, is here. The difference in the budget is it's a $14,513 increase, or 7% over last year. Mainly, it's transferring the salary of an individual from the rec revolving fund to the main line. So, other than that, it's a pretty flat budget. It's more of a transfer than it is a increase. You wanna?
What caused the transfer? Why?
Well, the Kim Tilton, who's in the Sunrise Sunset, she was originally hired part-time, and then when we realized as programs gained, she went full-time, and so the budget wasn't ready to take her full-time into the general fund, so we took part of those hours and put it into the revolving account. But I would like to now push her totally into the general fund, especially last year when we were going through different programs. She wasn't actually running any revenue-making programs, but she was doing a lot of other things in the midst of the environment that would make sense to save in the general fund versus having her in the revolving fund.
Any questions, comments, changes to the recreation budget? Seeing none, we'll go to the Recreation Revolving Fund, which is on page 661. It's a reduction of $325. And I'll let the Recreation Director explain.
This year is definitely different because I usually go with historic figures and tracking of how we spend money each year. With COVID hitting us last year, we did not make revenue, but going forward, I spoke to Steve, and I'm requesting the funds like it's a perfect world, going back to the historical aspect and anticipating that I will be hiring a full summer camp of employees, and we'll be doing everything, because if I don't put the money in there, and we do have a perfect world in June, come June, then I'm all set. Then I won't be spending the money. So I'd rather have it in there the revolving account is I spend and I make money, and it's always in the plus side. Last year was the first time, ever since we started it, that we lost money, and it was mainly due to the fact that the summer camp runs for expenditures in the prior fiscal year, and we make the money the following year. So last year, in 2019, we spent like it was a regular summer camp, and the revenue that generates to offset that 2019 summer camp was in 220, and we had to give back 142,000 every month. So that's really why we hit, otherwise we wouldn't have lost money.
Any questions for Amy? I will just make a comment, and that's that, I mean, first about the Sunrise Center, like, I think we are, our community is really fortunate to have Kim. Through everything that our town went through, and the work that she did to make sure that our seniors were taken care of was amazing.
Yeah.
So, and the same goes for the rec department. And so I'm really excited to see what happens for next year, and to see how the splash pad, I think, enhances the program, and have every confidence that things will be a perfect world.
Yes,
Or
the
close.
splash pad that will help move into the summer.
Mm-hmm.
That's my hope too. Thank you. Off to the Halloween haunt.
Good luck
Farewells.
today. Yeah.
You're welcome. You get the candy before the kids. Thank you very much.
So the next department will be the police department on page 43. I tell department heads to get here earlier if they can.
Glad I showed up early.
There's an increase of $97,314. As I mentioned, a good portion of that is due to contractual obligations from the collective bargaining agreement. And the other is an equipment lease, which I'll let the chief explain his budget.
Thank you for having me, Councilor Blackstone. I'm Kyle True. I'm the police chief here. I haven't met you officially yet, so welcome to council. Like Steve said, the majority of the increase is due to contractual obligations with the police union. The other big item that I'm going to be asking for is the purchase or to enter into a lease for body cameras. Last year I presented to the council a memo discussing where we stood with body cameras. I never closed the door on that. Over the past year, we've seen a dramatic request from the public for officers to be outfitted with body cameras. These are just some of the letters after the death of George Floyd. These are some of the letters that were sent to me, including dozens and dozens of emails that I responded. And the words that are given to me by the citizens is not a demand, but a request. And I would be remiss if I did not honor that. I think we're ready for them. It would show accountability. It would show transparency. And I think that the state law is clearly defined. Case law has not yet been, there have been really no cases with regards to Fourth Amendment issues that have been litigated that we can fall back on. But I think the desire and the need for transparency and accountability clearly outweighs any litigation right now. So the amount is $20,000 for the first year of the lease. That could increase to $23,000 based on the demand from the body camera companies. There are several The figure that I put forth was from a quote from Axon, which is an outfit that we lease our tasers from. The first year of the lease is the big year, and then it normally cuts in half for 5 years. So the first year would be approximately 20 to 23,000, and then the years after drop down to 10,200. With that being said, you're leasing the product, and after 5 years, you turn them in, and you continue with your lease, and you get brand new body cameras.
Does that include the storage?
It does, yes. For the package that I am gonna be requesting, yes. A basic package is a lot cheaper, but it's not something that I'm interested in. I would rather have the full support of Axon with the cloud-based storage. It's easier to download and to provide discoverable evidence to attorneys. It's easier to manage. So yes, it does.
Aren't there a number of issues with respect to who can view these tapes and how these tapes are accessible?
Yep. So the RSA 91A clearly defines that. The concern that I had last year was potential litigation for Fourth Amendment issues, meaning if we were to have an officer inside your home recording you. The concern was that there would be potential Fourth Amendment privileges that law enforcement could violate. And the concern was we did not want to be the community that created bad case law. However, with the climate of this year, the desire for transparency and accountability clearly outweighs that, and that's why I'm asking for it.
So that's an unresolved issue, right?
Case law, litigation, yes.
Were there any other items that you wanted to talk about in budget before we get to question? Any other questions?
Another program that I'm going to be instituting. It's a software purchase, and I did put it in there. It's called Guardian, and it's a tracking system where we can monitor employees' work. We can, if an officer gets a Data Boy letter or a Data Girl letter, we can enter it into this computer system where the officer can see it, the supervisors can see it. It's just a, bless you, it's just a way to maintain accountability in-house. It's like $1,500 a year, but that's the only small purchase that I had. So other than that, everything else is contractual.
Did you have your?
A couple of
Counselor
questions.
Dumont, yes.
Actually, I would like to go back to the Guardian system. Since you
Sure.
mentioned that. Is that good and bad public input that gets put in there?
Yeah.
For supervisory review?
If you were to write a letter, saying that Officer Smith did a fantastic job, it would go into Guardian. I could share it with the officer. I could share it with the officer supervisors. So at the end of the year, when we do our evaluations, the officers can, the supervisors can look back over the year to see the accolades as well as any discipline that could have been handed down to help refresh memory and to form evaluations.
I like it. I think it's a worthwhile purchase.
Thank you.
I have some concerns about body cams.
Sure. I know you do.
What's that?
I said I know you do.
Yeah. I don't think, I understand the public's desire and the
Sure.
public's need to have that record. We've seen a number of horrible videos that have only been brought to light because of the fact that officers were wearing body cams, and we saw some disturbing images about actions that shouldn't have taken place that did. Thankfully, I don't think Newmarket is ever going to have that kind of climate.
Sure.
But I still have those lingering suspicions that there is the potential for individuals' personal rights to be violated. I really, really do understand the public's desire to have them. I do not think we can go into this without having some sort of clear policies, whether they're internal or external via the state, that defines, what could happen, how to protect people. Because I think one of the things that we is, and I'm going to reference George Floyd because it's so relevant, George Floyd passed away on camera. that is not something that I think his family was ready to have released to the entire world while they were still grieving and coping with that. Whether it's Mr. Floyd's passing or somebody else's situation, police capture people at their best days and at their worst days, not always in the best of living situations and sometimes in great living situations. And it's one of those things where if we start recording that and it becomes somewhat available without proper guidance as to how we release that, it can open a can of worms.
Sure. And to respond, the policy is my responsibility.
Yeah.
It's not anyone else's responsibility but mine. Full policy will be in place before the implementation of this program. It will be a CALEA standard policy. And I'm going to take a minute here to stand up for the officers, because the officers have a desire to have the body cameras as well. You know, there's 18,000 police agencies in this country. There's 20 to 30 million police contacts a day. Every other week, we see a bad video of a bad cop. And now those bad cops should be fired and should be charged. What you don't see on these body cameras are all the good things that these officers do. And but there are times that over the past year, I wish we had the body cameras in place. I have a female police officer who pulled a car over for talking on the cell phone while driving, and she was berated because of her gender. The most vile words were thrown at her, and it's not fair. I would love to show a jury that. I would love to show a judge that. I have an African-American police officer who over the past year has been called some of the most vile names, most racist names I've heard. Is it someone's constitutional right to call him these names? Yeah, unfortunately it is. But I would love to show the judge and jury what these officers have to put up with. So with that being said, it's not only for police accountability, it's also to provide the judge and jury what these officers have to put up with on a day-to-day basis.
And just like I add too, and remember, 99.9% of the people out here now have a camera on them, and they're the ones doing the filming. When a police officer's doing their job, they can't take 5 minutes and pull out their cell phone to record their interactions if the other individual is doing something wrong. This is to protect both sides in this situation. Yes, we have certain laws that we have to follow in releasing this information. Understand that they're being filmed as everybody else in the public is being filmed by every other person. A lot of these cases, it's not the body cam that takes this, it's some guys watching the incident who releases the video. So that's why we need to make sure, and you can never control what's on those videos because it can be edited. This is the official record of what that officer saw. So I think it's just that's the importance of having that and making sure that we have the right policies, which the chief said it's his duty to make sure we do in place before we adopt it.
Can I follow? Would those policies be available for the council to see before you implement them?
I don't generally share policies with the council. I don't generally share them with the public. A conversation could take place where if it has to do with tactics or personnel, that the town manager can make that decision whether or not to pull me into non-public to have the conversation with the council.
Yeah.
Could I? So
Yes.
I'm also I'm not concerned about the body camera, but I am concerned about, there's a difference between a person releasing a video that they did and an official government person releasing a video. It's just different. And so the idea of the body to get visibility, transparency.
Correct.
But we're going to release it with a rule and regulation or a body of how to handle it that's not transparent and isn't visible.
I'm not following you.
Okay,
Who said
you're
we're going to
gonna-
be releasing it that way?
So what I heard you say was that you're gonna, before the body cameras are issued, you're gonna develop rules or a regulation
Yep.
about how to use them, right?
Correct.
But the regulation will be private, it will not be publicly available, or it won't even be available within the government.
It will be a CALEA standard, which is a national policing standard. that is used by major metropolitan police departments to the city of Dover, to the city of Portsmouth's working on CALIA certification right now.
But those standards are not publicly available?
I don't believe every agency.
Portions are, portions aren't.
Say it again?
Portions are and portions aren't.
Right,
We're not gonna release things that involve security,
I,
period, end of sentence.
yeah.
I get that, but I think what Councilor Blackstone is saying is that you're devising policy at which a public body is going to operate by for gathering information that may or may not necessarily be, you know.
And I think to maybe put your mind, 91A defines when body camera footage can be released.
Right, the state law is out there,
It is.
yeah.
And that's issued, that's given law.
Right.
That's given law, yes.
Was that not in place last year when you sent us your letter?
It was in place last year.
It was?
Yes.
All right.
Yep. The unforeseen potential Fourth Amendment privilege litigation was not in place, and that still has not been in place.
Okay.
But again, I think the desire, the need, and the demand for police accountability and transparency outweighs that.
If I may, just to, this is a policy decision that will be debated when the chief enters into a contract and the council will have to sign. I think you could have that debate at that point. This is just to put it in the budget. If you support it,
Right.
go forward. If not, then you can make a motion to amend the budget to reduce it. But also remember, he could find money somewhere else in his budget later on to transfer it.
Any other questions on that topic at all? Okay.
No, thank you.
Are there any other questions that, like I said, that was the other, that was the only big I was gonna ask for this year. Last year, we did very well. We only spent 91% of our budget last year. $85,000 of that was because of personnel. We returned approximately $114,000 to the town last year. When COVID-19 hit, Steve gave direction to stop discretionary spending and to put a halt on any hiring. That's what we did. We can't live like that. In the future, we need to get back to full staff. So that answers the question regarding the return of the money last year.
Where are you at with staffing?
Right now, I have we're in good shape, but we're not 100% yet. We are still down 2 positions. One is scheduled to go to the academy in January, and we're in the process of hiring the latter. So we are able to be creative with scheduling and making adjustments to reduce overtime, and we'll pull our detective out sometimes to cover calls. We have our command staff covering calls, so we're doing our best to hold the line. It would be nice to, be full staffed, but I don't know of a police agent staffed. I'm not aware of one. There's not people knocking down the door to become police officers these days.
And to be quite honest, we're also seeing a trend that senior leadership is retiring because of the current atmosphere. Any other questions for police?
I did, actually. Dave, this is one that we've spoken about a number of times. You had mentioned to me at one point in time that there are some crimes that are very cost prohibitive to investigate,
Yeah.
and that there are certain things that you wish you had more money to be able to put people on and spend the time and actually go through. And I'm not necessarily seeing any sort of big jumps or line items in here that would perhaps suggest that. Do you feel like this is enough to fund your department, or are there things that you think we're missing in order to be able to effectively enforce the law in Newmarket?
And I know the crimes that you and I have spoke about, you can't throw money at those crimes to make them go faster. They're
Right.
time consuming because they require a lot of investigation, search warrant preparation, phone
Yeah.
record, cell phone record, internet type of requests through which takes subpoenas and search warrants.
Yeah.
So by throwing money at it is not the way to solve that.
Okay.
So
Let's-
I appreciate the
That's what I wanted.
and I appreciate that. Thank you.
anything else?
Yeah, could I make a recommendation for an increase?
Sure.
We have $600 in here for animal control.
Yes.
There are like skunks and stuff all over the place. I personally have had to hire people to come in and would that be reasonable to up that
We
to a
don't
couple
do that.
$1,000s and go
That's
up?
not our bailiwick.
So you know, I wish we did have an animal control officer, but that's not something I'm gonna ask for right now. I think back in the 80s, there was a part-time animal control officer, and then that position got eliminated, and the police department picked up the slack on that. Our animal control line is literally to buy leashes, to buy cages, to buy treats for animals.
Oh, for the canine.
It's a great public relations tool. The officers have biscuits and treats in their cruisers, and it's just a way to strike up a friendly human conversation. Also, there are times where if a animal that we bring to the SPCA needs some type of emergency operation or care, they may ask us to help supplement the cost. So
No skunks. Huh?
No skunks. We don't pick up skunks.
I asked my pest company one time, it's $900 per skunk. So,
Oh my gosh, really?
putting it out there.
Yeah.
In Newmarket, we only have gold-plated.
Oh, yes, skunks, yeah.
we do handle skunk calls if they are, if they're near the school or if they're near, or kids are playing. But a lot of times, it's Mother Nature. There's a lot of skunks in the forest.
I will. I just have two comments. So one, just to follow up, we go up to Jackson quite often, and I'm often walking my dogs, and the Jackson police make a point of if they see people walking their dogs, they stop, they give them treats, and I'm sure up there's a lot of people who don't belong there, who aren't from there, and so it's a great way for them to find out who you are and where you're staying, and that kind of. So it's just sort of nice, a nice connection
It's an icebreaker.
with the community. Exactly. And then I keep every piece of paper. It's a problem that I have, and so I have all of my budgets from years ago, and I just wanted to point out that in 2012, that things shift, right? Like, so it's probably not exactly apples to apples, but your budget was 1.2 basically, and right now the request is 1.7. So so in 2012. So in 10 years, it really hasn't increased very much, and I think that it's a testament to how effectively you manage your budget, but it's also, we haven't put a lot of resources into the police department, and I think that we've made a couple of changes. We added an officer for the first time
Since the 90s.
since the 90s, and so I just commend the work that you do every day, and obviously the work that you do to effectively manage your budget with
This is a
limited
good-
resources.
Yeah, this is a good time to highlight this in general. Mm-hmm. The budget of the town has not added new programming that much in years. I mean, if anything, we've reduced it by contracting services and rolling the duties into other positions. Police is a perfect example, when they have not had a new officer since last year, was it 93? 95. So think of
Hence
it
my
that way.
question about funding.
Yeah,
You know,
and I think that's just something to look at, and we're not asking for new programming this year because of the current situation. I think if we didn't have a pandemic, we would have been more, look for more things that we could have done in the coming year, just because the economy was in a good situation. But we know that we haven't done a lot of new things on the town side.
Right.
I appreciate the accolade. I'm not going to take all the credit. If you surround yourself with good people who have the same ideals as you, you become successful. And I give a lot of credit to Lisa Symes, who is my administrative assistant. She is a bargain shopper, and if I ask her, I need 500 of these, she'll find it at the cheapest rate, and she was instrumental during the COVID-19 to shop around and outfit the entire police department, and we have been trying to supplement what we can to town hall for PPE and cleaning supplies, just because we find it at a cheaper rate. So I can't take credit for everything. I have good people that work for me. My 2 lieutenants could step in and do my job if something happened or I left tomorrow. So I think in general, I thank you for that, and everybody at the PD side.
This might be, I don't know if this is the right time to ask about PPE and funding and, and CARES funding, if there's, like, where we're at with everything.
Bill, what's our latest and greatest number on CARES funding?
Well, so when we checked before this last submission, we were somewhere around 119, 120,000 that we had available to us. But that's up in the air right now because we still have one more submission. So, because we have until the October 30th, the spending went from September 1st to October 15th. Then the door closed. And now we're collecting everything and putting it all together. I did hear some information yesterday, which, and that was that FEMA has gone through its preliminary review of our information. So I'm meeting with the guy on the phone on Monday, and then I'll do my sign-offs, which sounds kind of weird, but anyway, that's their process. So once that's done, then it goes to the second review, I guess. So that's FEMA. But anyway, in terms of Gopher, we, up until this last one, we had around 119, 120.
And what we're hoping is that if something gets denied in FEMA, Gopher's gonna,
We'll
because
cover it.
we're all the municipalities doing it at the same time.
Yeah,
So what we're hoping is something gets denied in FEMA, the state will then come in and say, okay, if you have leftover Gopher money, take it from there
right.
to do to fill it in.
We actually, we were very judicious about how we requested reimbursement because we really stuck to the letter of the law. And the department heads were great about it as well. So we were encouraged in this, and this is the reason, I'm bringing this up because of this whole issue of how much do we have left. We were encouraged, was it last week, that we spend more.
Spend more.
And so it was, we were informed that, oh, in fact, you could have all your first responders' payroll covered in this. Well, that was never our understanding. But once we were told that, then we put in that last time period. Word that I got from the assistant finance director yesterday was that, we may be very close as a result of that. So, because that's a huge chunk. If we'd have done that from day one, we would have been out of money like within the first 2 times. And then and really, then there wouldn't have been money for PPE and that sort of thing. So,
And our thought there was, we're still operating.
right.
That wasn't something of an
Exactly.
emergency. We'd rather have the emergency funds for those kind of items at the beginning, because we didn't know. I mean, we didn't know what
Right.
kind of PPE we were gonna need. We didn't know the burn rate we were gonna run into.
Right.
A lot of things, in hindsight, people bring it up, well, we're seeing a surge again. Well, back at the original surge, we were concerned about hospital beds, ventilators,
Right.
those kind of items, where now we're more prepared that you're not gonna see the same issue that we had, the panic we had in March this time, because we are more prepared. PPE, we're fine. We got more than enough.
I do remember being on the conference call with Steve and the fire chief, and we were negotiating a deal with a t-shirt company to purchase masks for $2 a piece from China. We're now purchasing masks at 24 cents
Yeah.
a piece.
And the reason why we're getting it for $2 a piece was because the state didn't have any. And when the state ordered it, the feds were holding them up in customs and taking them and bring them other places. To say we sort of bootlegged, brought them in different ways, we did. We circumvented we needed masks, so we wanted to make sure we had them. We had headphone companies and T-shirt companies. All of a sudden, we got masks from them. So
And there's been some young people around Seacoast who have been instrumental in 3D printers, making masks and shields, and they're donating them. You know, as kids in high school, they're doing this for us and for no fee. So we're very appreciative of that. We try to thank them when we do get a donation.
That's awesome.
anything else?
My son is in the National Guard, and he unloads like a huge airplane of stuff like at least once a
Yeah.
week. Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know why everything seems to come through New Hampshire. No, I mean literally they fly from China
Yeah.
to New Hampshire and they unload it here and then I guess they ship it around the country or something. I don't know why.
Great.
One other thing I might add, just about the Gopher money, is that we also were able, as a result of that, to make sure that we had the ability to do distributed meetings like we're doing, because we didn't have the infrastructure, or it wasn't as good a shape as it needed to be nearly. So that Gopher money helped us significantly in that area.
Thank you, Chief.
Since we have time before our next one, do you want to go through what I refer to as the smaller departments? What we traditionally do is I just read the number, explain why there's an increase or decrease, and if you want to stop, just tell me stop,
Okay.
and we'll get into it more. So we'll start on page 27, which is the town council. There is no increase.
Cut it.
Got it. The next page is the town manager, which is an increase due to salary and contractual obligations.
Did we approve that?
You did. The next is the finance department with a reduction of 4.23%. That's due to the creation of the HR department and the transfer of a staff person from finance to HR. The finance department, as you just said, there's an increase of 4.75%. That's a mix of the new staff person, but also we had a 6% guaranteed maximum rate increase on health care. That means it could go lower, as well as we're seeing significant increases in our retirement costs as the New Hampshire retirement system is trying to make up their funds by lack of investments, return of investments, so we have to pay additional dues. The town clerk tax collector is a 9.22%. There's changes this coming year. She is anticipating the retirement of a full-time staff member. She's going to what they're going to do, that is staff members going to reduce their hours beginning on February 2021. So in July 2021, they're going to add another part-time position, which will be filled by the current employee, and allowed to hire a full-time employee but not lose the trained employee. So basically, we're backfilling, so we have somebody who's trained that can help us train the other individuals. So they're going to bring on a new employee, train them without disrupting the flow of the office, and this will result in 2 full-time positions and 3 part-time positions. Ultimately, they'll review that again with the retirements. You stop, Bird.
Yeah, I had a question.
Yep.
The equipment maintenance,
Mm-hmm.
what is that number?
Ballot box.
That's what I thought.
Yep.
So does that mean that we are going to add a second ballot box?
We are trying to.
Trying to.
Yeah.
Okay.
But there's also going to be a change in the ballot box soon. The state's mandating a new box,
Oh,
so we're gonna have to look at that as well.
okay. Any other questions? What was my other one? Stitch.
Mhm.
I know that it's not a big number, but I'm just curious why, so we expended 9 last year, but we're bumping it up, and I'm curious why. I know there's usually a reason.
Rate increases.
Okay.
We're seeing.
That much?
Yeah, we're seeing them come quite often now. Usually once or twice a year.
Okay.
Is that like certified mail or is that just like
Certified,
general?
regular stamps, everything.
it?
Everything
Okay.
goes through their office. So,
Thank God we're disrupting the USPS.
yeah.
Thank you.
Code enforcement. 4.39% increase. Nothing really other than salaries. welfare, 18.76, because that's an actual, we're seeing an increase in requests for assistance on rent. Just for new counselors, when I got here in 2012, the welfare budget was about $125,000. We reduced that down to 38 by reviewing, looking at nonprofits that are out there to assist with us, that are out there to help, that we're able to get down there.
I actually wrote a bunch of numbers down because I, again, went back to my 2012 budget, and we had $80,000 budgeted just for rent, $6,000 for electricity, $9,000 for medical, and so yeah, our total operating budget was 128 for welfare, and it is, we're requesting 38 now. It's an incredibly significant number. I probably disagree with, I think that I think it's challenging for people to apply for welfare. We're a small community, and there are lots of services in town that pick up the slack, and we're fortunate to have those services. I see across the board, multiple, whether it's through the school or through community services, a lot of people coming at the same problem, for food insecurity is just one example. There are so many. I used to serve on the board of Newmarket Community Education Partnership, and we would get requests for food for kids constantly. So to subsidize their lunches that they have to buy, and that's in addition to free and reduced lunch, to buy snacks for the snack cabinet, to buy and 68 hours of hunger meals. It's pretty staggering when you put all of those pieces together, and so you don't always see the whole picture because it's a little bit here and a little bit there, so it overwhelms me.
I'm overwhelmed too. Before we flipped pages, so I don't expect anyone to necessarily know the answer to that right now off the top of their head, but I'm curious, with that decrease over time, do we find that the number of people who are being served by these direct services has changed at all? I worry seeing such a dramatic change that people are falling through the cracks. You know what I mean?
I don't think we're just having people fall through the cracks. If anything, they may be getting some services that we can't provide because of the legal aspect of welfare for the state, that we have to follow specific guidelines, what we can and can't provide, versus if we can go to a nonprofit, they can finagle things and assist in ways that we can't.
Absolutely. Yeah.
For example, and this is one of the worst things that we do have to deal with, is a death. And if somebody can't afford a funeral, we only have to pay the minimum, which is a cremation. If somebody wants more than a cremation, sometimes other people step in and help out. But again, we only give what's for a cremation. Food, we send them to the food pantry so they get what they need, versus handing cash or handing a card so they can go shopping. We don't hear that people are. I don't hear complaints that people are falling through the cracks. I hear complaints because we ask them the questions that are in the form,
Yeah.
because that's what we have to do, which is frustrating. And I understand that it's not a good thing to come to this, and it's scary and frustrating. But on our side is we have to follow the law if we're giving out public funds.
Right.
So, yeah, it's a good partnership, and I want to thank them very much for all the stuff they do for us.
Awesome.
So,
Yeah, I just wanted to recognize the community church. They
Yeah.
give out substantial amounts of money for rent, utilities, food, gas cards, and I think a lot of people just don't even know that they actually do that. And so, while this budget may be lower, I'm sure they're giving out more need or more assistance than they probably have ever. I don't know how many people saw the line at the food pantry on Thursday, but it was as big as I've seen it ever,
Really?
So I don't think there's probably less need. I mean, also, I think the economy's probably better than it was in 10 years ago, so
right.
it's a factor.
Just a public comment. 1 in 6 children go to bed hungry every day.
Next, assessing. It's a 1.56% increase. This is one of those departments where I mentioned that when I got here, there was a staff person, and we contracted out immediately after. We entered into another agreement with them, and it's been working. Legal, again, when I got here, legal fee, we had a legal bill of about $150,000 to $160,000 a year. We went out to bid, and we were able to agree to have them on retainer, which has been a win-win. We don't pay as much, and staff isn't afraid to call the attorney and ask a question because of the meter running. So it's almost as if we have a staff attorney in that situation.
How often do we like go out to bid? Like, how long is that contract for?
You know, we probably should do it again soon.
That's what I was wondering. Not that I have any complaints with our
Yeah.
current, but I'm just curious.
Yeah. We'll skip the next one, which is planning. Go to-
Could I ask, is the attorney local?
Yeah, Exeter, Donahue, Tucker, and Shindella. The
No,
firm of
I don't know
Donahue-
attorneys, but he's in Newmarket.
No, Exeter.
Oh, Exeter. Okay.
Their expertise is municipal law,
All right.
and they have offices in Portsmouth. Exeter's their main one, I believe Concord. So it's a large firm. We
Right.
deal with one attorney who's John Radigan, who's the senior partner. I believe he's almost managing partner now. But we also have the expertise of a labor attorney in there. If it's a smaller item, he'll do it to other partners that may have more time or expertise. So it's great because we have a whole firm versus one attorney with different expertises.
Say, Mr. Radigan has come in handy several times in the past couple of years, so they really good stuff.
And if we have a specific issue or a larger issue, I should say, a larger issue,
Special counsel.
especially, yes.
For example,
yeah.
we do. We have I'm blanking on the firm's name, but we have an environmental attorney for MS4 and anything with the wastewater, because it's not in the wheelhouse for that attorney to deal with the EPA. So we have special environmental attorneys. So. Okay, we'll skip planning. Go to conservation. $2,900, no increase. Economic development, $30,000, no increase. This is for the consulting services. As you heard the presentation the other night, now we'll go to the next step, and this is where we'll get those funds from. Principal for debt, $200,000. That's bonds that we have to pay off, so it's as well as the interest on the next one. IT is $169,592, or a 1.6% increase. As the council's aware, we have contracted out IT services and reduced the IT director position to fold it in with the director of finance and administration. So we took the finance director and he oversees both now. It's working. I mean, a lot of people are glad. We basically pick up the phone, you got an IT problem, they're doing it remotely, and they get in and fix it. Channel 13, there's a 2.32% decrease. Bill, do you know why?
Yes, because Tim reduces hours, the channel manager. But we've fortunately hung on to him and his services, so he took a full-time position in Exeter. And, but we asked if it was possible for him to continue his relationship with the town, and he was eager to do that, so, which is nice. He likes working here with us. So that's the main reason for that.
Now I'm gonna jump.
Actually, can I ask a couple questions on Channel 13?
Sure.
It seems like it's all working, being in this remote setup that we have to do. They're running into any equipment issues, software issues, anything like that, stuff that we are not maybe necessarily funding, that we should
Yes.
plan for?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which we are going to look at now.
All right.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted to know.
Yes.
All right.
It's not, and it's nothing staff, no staff issues, nothing there. It's just we had to pivot.
Yeah.
And, you know, this room, for example, is not set up for the perfect meeting room. It's a multi-purpose room.
Mhm.
So, as you can see, between the meetings we have, things change every time.
Yeah.
So that's what we're pivoting and trying to determine as well. Ultimately, I think we need to look at the AV in this room a little bit more. I think we just put in new speakers recently.
Well, he's done a lot of experimentation in terms
Right.
of moving things around so that we don't get feedback and things like that.
Mhm.
But the other thing, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
one thing that came up because of a recent meeting, there was some issues with the audio. And that is that we don't control the external environment. We only control the internal environment to the town. So it's difficult for Tim or the other staff to know whether or not there's a problem on somebody's end because they have a conflict with a mic.
Yeah.
Or a video attachment. We don't know if they've maintained their antivirus software and so on, or if they've updated things for operating system stuff. So those kind of things, cause us some headaches that we're not even aware of, and we forget, So, anyway, I just thought I'd add that in, because it is one of the challenges that
It's
we
helpful
keep
to
running
know,
into.
because, I mean, we see, musings from members of the town who might have an issue hearing a meeting or seeing something. We deal with our own snafus like we had the other night, and
Right.
between all of that, there's also an ongoing pandemic that, so
Yeah.
that's why I felt it wouldn't be doing justice if we didn't at least ask to
Yep.
investigate.
We appreciate that.
But there's no equipment, currently, no upgrades for the budget.
There's some replacements
Well,
and
yeah, he did some replacements this last year, which really helped. And then, there is some money in there for,
The miscellaneous
for
line.
repairs mainly. And they're miscellaneous, but there's not a requirement for any major purchases at this point.
Right, and I guess that's what I was getting at. So if we need to make any significant changes, or even maybe not so significant changes to this room, because let's face it, we're gonna be meeting down here probably for the foreseeable future. Because I don't think social distancing is going away anytime soon, so, so to have this room just be a better meeting space. So that's what you guys are looking into now?
Yes.
Yeah.
is how we're gonna do this. To the point where, in this room, we still have these two weird offices back here that is just using storage, that I think we need to look at removing them so we can get more room in here,
No.
so.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you to flip to page 54, which are which begin with grants. The big reduction there is, we had 15,000 in festival support. Don't have any festivals, and I don't see one the coming year because of the pandemic. So my recommendation is reduce that. I reduced it by $7,000, just so there is some money if we can do something later in the year, hopefully. But I just didn't see the need there.
Was there a historical purpose for that festival line?
Yep, Old Home Day, and we also had the
Heritage Festival.
Festival,
Okay,
and they just stopped, so
all right.
we're gonna try that. The next one is social service grants. I level funded it just because of the current situation. And the only one that was a change, child advocacy is in the police budget.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was gonna ask
We
about that,
moved
because I
that to
know that
there.
that's something that they use.
Yes, so we moved that to the police budget a while back, because that's their operations.
Could I ask a question on grants?
Yes,
What is a hand tub?
Hand Tub is the fire station up here.
Oh, this is the.
Yeah, the
okay.
Hand Tub Association,
Right,
yep.
yeah. I've heard of a hot tub, I just.
Yeah, no, the Hand Tub is the pump, yeah.
And so there were a few, and only because this comes up, I wanted to ask about the grants. So everybody else is, if they were funded last year, they're funded this year.
Correct.
Thank God.
What happened to senior citizens? Why do we have a line, but we don't have any money there?
I have to know, which number?
On grants?
Were you referring to Link Together?
I was just curious why we have a line item
No,
for
It
it.
was
You're looking at
59,109.
58,
54.
50, 150.
Yeah,
I'm sorry?
59,109 for Link
On page
Together is line.
54.
So we still have a line item, but no amounts associated
Oh,
with them.
Linked Together?
Yeah.
Is that the one?
no,
No,
he's talking
no.
about
I
50 on page 54.
Oh, 58,150.
Oh,
Oh, because there's no more senior center. There used to be a second senior center in town called the Beach Street Center. That folded into the town center, so we got rid of that.
Right, now I just wonder why
Yeah.
we didn't get rid of the line.
Yeah, no, it's still in there for historical purposes.
Yeah.
Yeah, for a while, we actually had 2 senior centers running in town.
That's good for the environment to have the seniors running.
Yeah. So the next one is, like I said, is social service grants. The only reduction was Child Advocacy Center, which is in the police budget. The next page is the Memorial Day Parade. And that's our contribution to that.
Could I ask, this may be a policy question, but I was just curious. So we hear from the police that they want to become as modern as possible, right?
Mhm.
And so what I see on the news is, for instance, in San Francisco, there are certain certain calls to the police department that police no longer respond to. They respond by like Child and Family Services or things like that, right? Would it make sense to have Child and Family Services not be part of the police, but be part of some general response?
They're not part of the police. It's just that the funding that we provide to the Child Advocacy Center is just in the police budget,
Oh,
but they're
okay.
not a part of the police department.
When I
They're a
first,
separate agency.
right, when I first got there, there was discussions about reducing grants. And the police chief at the time said, this is so important to us that we would like to move that to our budget so I can oversee that. I said, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
So when they expend that money, is that something where it's coming out of their budget for whomever programming decides to use it? For like
No,
child
it
advocacy
goes
or-
to the Child Advocacy
Oh, okay.
Center.
All right.
Yeah.
As, in the form of a grant, like a
in the form of
one-time grant.
Right.
Thank you.
Every year we cut them a check, they get it, and they provide us the service.
Perfect.
And I apologize for so many questions I'm new.
No, absolutely, no, there's no need to apologize.
RSVP I see on cognac bottles, but I was wondering what it means here.
Retired senior,
Volunteer program.
yes, thank you.
And what is RCCPA?
Rockingham Community Action Program.
And they did not apply, I'm sorry, but the RSVP, they didn't apply this year?
They did not. If we get a letter later on, we can
add
provide
it.
the money.
Okay.
I wonder if due to COVID, how they're doing, though.
Right.
I mean, everything I've been to that's been an RSVP program has been a ton of people in one room working on projects together, so.
I mean, right, I could tell you that Ready Rides actually asked for a reduction. But again, if RSVP needs to come in, I'll just take the money from there. So it's minimal, it's cut in half. So it's $750.
Wow.
But a $13 million budget, 750 isn't.
Peanuts.
I appreciated their gesture, but I'll keep it in there in case we need somewhere else.
I did want to ask, because I wasn't really sure where the best spot would be in the budget to look at it. On voting day, I had a voter come up and said that I think it was a tax credit that she gets, either for her husband having been a veteran, or it was
Veterans
something
tax.
related
Yep.
to their property taxes.
Yep.
But she said due to her income level, it was just a cutoff because of her SSI benefits. She's no longer eligible for it because
She should call the assessing department
okay.
to review that. I mean,
Because she had proposed this idea of like kind of a graduated cutoff on
Yep.
it, but I wasn't sure really in terms of funding those.
a lot of those situations, we have to follow state law.
Okay.
It's not we don't set those as a,
I didn't think it was just a
Yeah.
quick, easy fix. I wasn't sure in terms of reflection on budgetary matters where we, apply
Yep.
that.
so again, the last one was Memorial Day. That's just the parade support and the flags. And so that brings us to capital reserve funds at 10 o'clock, which is the scheduled time.
Look at that.
So I'm gonna allow the town planner in, Diane Hardy. She's on via Zoom. I'm asking her to. All other members of the committee are on mute, and their video is not there, so Diane also needs to unmute. If any of those members wish to participate, I ask them to raise their hand. We just want to control how much participation is, and overlap. So, Diane, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can.
Yep.
Okay. I would like to invite Russ Simon to join me for
Yep.
this, because he's gonna give some opening remarks this morning.
Okay, I asked.
So could you,
Russ should be there. He's there.
Okay, hi Russ.
Russ, unmute yourself.
Yeah, I think I did.
Yep.
Being the technological genius that I am. Good morning to everybody, and I want to thank the for inviting us to the budget workshop today. I'm just going to give a quick overview on a few things, and then turn it back to Diane, and maybe any others who may have other comments. It's been and continues to be an extraordinary year. You all know that. I wanted to take at least a little time and thank the town manager and his staff and the school superintendent and her staff for their support and their professionalism to the process. It's been designed, it's been compacted, it's been zoomed, and I think Diane will say, I think we got this all done within 30 days, that it used to take us 6 months or 7 months to do through the process. Everyone has contributed to the accelerated timetable. I wanted to thank the CIP committee for their dedication, and really especially to Diane, who has redesigned the process, zoomed it, compacted it into a 30-day period of meetings, and Susan Frick as recording secretary, I think was probably typing for a month straight, especially since we have to vote on over 50 items in one session to be able to get it done. We recognize how difficult a year this is. As a committee, we wrote you a side letter as well, which I touched on. But it's been extraordinary. We know the revenue pressures in the state. We know the staffing pressures. Our compliments to everybody in reacting, but it looks like we're in this for the next at least 2 to 3 years in a fairly stressful and unusual environment. So my thanks to everybody. They really did a great job this year. We recognize that we believe what we've given for last year and this year is a great roadmap and a pretty comprehensive view of the various capital projects and needs of both the school and the town systems. We recognize you're only going to probably be able to concentrate at best on those that are urgent. But we do think we have a roadmap there, so as things loosen up, I hope over time, the town council and schools will prioritize and see if we can get some of those done. But it's been a really extraordinary year. A couple of points for longer term planning, and again, we recognize that not much can be done in just trying to keep our heads above water today. But what the facilities are for the school administration in town, we have many projects that are listed to upgrade the facilities, and we think it's useful if you think about, is that the place you want to be for the next 5 or 10 years, or before we make the investments into some of our existing properties, at least go through that thought process of, are there any other town and school facilities that may be more appropriate for the long term to invest in. It has come up, and I'm still unclear whether the school has the power today or not, but the need to be able to do lease purchase agreements, we understand may not be fully clear throughout the town and the school as far as legality or powers. I think you're working on that, and if that is going to be a more popular way of funding some of our capital assets plans.
And if I may, just I coincidentally I got an opinion this week. We're still hammering it out. I had the town attorney work with the Department of Revenue Administration. The council is allowed to enter into lease purchase agreement and withdraw those funds from a capital reserve fund as long as there's a non-appropriation clause in the lease purchase. So for whatever reason that you don't appropriate it, then we have to turn back the equipment. That rarely happens because what we do is we then put those lease payments in the budget. So, yes, we, on the town side, we do not have to go to the voters. The town council can do it on their own as a legislative body. School side is different because they still operate under state law versus a town charter. So, good news on our side is yes, and you will probably be seeing a fire truck lease coming up shortly.
Okay, that's great. Steve, I wanted to, it sounded like you had the option of putting the lease purchase agreement into the operating budget and pay for it out of operating funds.
We do.
Or to withdraw capital funds to pay for it, or both.
We do.
Hey, that's great. I
Yep.
think that gives you a lot of flexibility. Thank you very much. The last one, and I think it's probably because we tend not to publicize it, is how the town and school are working together, and should work together on certain projects, whether it be technology or systems or phones or things like that, where that working together can do it more, both efficiently and cooperatively in the town. And I would just suggest to the town council as well as the school board that maybe once a quarter they should give an update to the town of the various projects and things that have been done jointly, just to educate us townspeople on the work that's being done between the two councils and boards. With that said, let me turn it over to Diane to give you an overview of the process and some of the results. Thank you.
Diane, you're muted.
Down below, okay.
There you go.
Hear me now, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Town Manager. I wanted to just kind of give you an overview of what we've received for CIP requests this year. We received 51 requests from the various town departments, as well as there were 5 or 6 projects from the schools that we included as well. And you'll see that many of these are repeats from previous years. For the same projects that come forward that the departments are diligently saving money for, so when the time comes, they'll have the funds available to be able to implement. A couple of new projects that I just wanted to point out. The Public Works Department is recommending a stormwater management project on New Road to deal with some of the drainage and flooding issues in that vicinity. We also have a proposal from Recreation for a screen, if you will, or for their outdoor patio area, so the seniors can spend good times out in the sunshine during this pandemic. And also we have a third project being recommended by the sewer department for a cover to our clarifier at the wastewater treatment plant. And there's a host of other projects as well. I assume you've all gotten a copy, if you will, of the Halloween colors, orange and black, capital improvements booklet. Hopefully you've had a chance to browse through that and look at the various projects. At this point, I'd be more than happy to try to answer any questions. I would encourage our committee to chime in as well if they have comments that they'd like to share. I just wanted to give you an overview that we are, excuse me, I lost my page. We've received $2.279 million in requests from the departments. This is at the town, on a town-wide basis, and the committee is recommending $2.236 million in improvements. And I'm sure there's been a few cuts given the urgency of these times. I guess at this point I'd like to open it up for questions. And if for some reason we can't answer all your questions, please, as the other department heads come in to meet with you today, if you have CIP questions that they specifically can answer, I'm sure they'd be more than happy to do so.
Thank
This is
you,
where
David.
I jump in.
Yes.
Because the CIP is the plan for the projects we're gonna do. The contribution to the capital reserve funds, which part of, we're looking at the budget, is how we fund it. Yes, there are $2.2 million worth of projects. However, we could not do them all in 1 year by just appropriating that amount. So what we do is we either enter into leases, bonding, or we put money in the capital reserve funds to do projects. So what we're looking at in the budget now is a request from department heads to place $504,000 into capital reserve funds to assist funding these projects. I have recommended $449,000 with the reductions in of $50,000 in road and weight improvements. The only reasoning there, the highway fund block grant, we're not anticipating to be receiving as much as we have in the past due to nobody's driving. One of the way we get the money there is the gas toll or gas tax, and we are already anticipating a reduction there. So I just thought that we could reduce that by $50,000. I think we could also increase it $50,000 if the council wishes to do so. It would allow us to continue to do road projects on the pace we've been doing. The other large reduction you'll see is $71,050 in recreation facilities. The reason for that is that additional money was to go towards the splash pad. So it's already been appropriated, so we're all set. We just needed it in there, and that project's going forward. We're adding $20,000 for telecommunications and IT, which is needed, as well as $10,000 in compensated absences. I believe the last I knew, we had about $300,000 worth of unfunded compensated absences out there. That's it, again, if we were to shut down Operation Stay and had to pay it all out, I hope, unless there's some major revolution. But that's that's the other thing. But we had a number of retirements in the recent years that we had to go into the fund to pay off, so that's why we did that. Building improvement, we did up that by $5,000. I know the chair of the CIP committee mentioned looking at our facilities, and probably within the next year, I'm going to discuss with the superintendent of schools and with the council and school board to do a facilities study on this building and other empty facilities or facilities that we have in town to ways we could repurpose it. Town hall, I know it's hard to believe, but we do have a space crunch here. We don't have a lot of conference room space for smaller meetings. You either have to meet in this room, which isn't very private, or council chambers, which is used quite often. So we are gonna have to address that shortly and work with the SAU, because they have the same issue. Yeah, as you know, with the last few years, we have reconfigured walls and spaces here. Like my office, we did put a small conference table in there so I could have meetings. When I first got here, we couldn't. So we are going to have to look at our space needs here, especially storage. The more we operate, the more records we have. So I'm glad that the CIP acknowledged that and that we need to look at our facilities. So I'm recommending for contribution to capital reserve fund of $449,000 or a decrease of $86,057. Any wishes to change that?
I have a question.
Sure.
So the CIP plan looks well into the future.
10 years,
And,
yep.
and our contributions to the funds don't necessarily reflect projects that we anticipate for this year. You know, like
Yep.
it just, sometimes it's for planning for future years. So my question is, besides a review of buildings, what other items do you think that we might actually be seeing happen for this, in this budget?
Good question. Vehicle replacement for Public Works. As I mentioned, the fire truck. Diane, do you wish to, are you raising your hand? You're muted. You're muted.
Nope.
You're still muted. There you go. Oh, you just were unmuted.
Oh.
Muted.
hold down your.
Hold your space bar down, Diane. That will unmute you, and just keep your hand on it.
Yeah, stay holding it down.
Are you clicked on the Zoom portal? You got to click on the Zoom portal and then hold down your space bar, and it should automatically unmute you.
Can I unmute her? No.
Steve, you also might have the potential.
I can only ask her to unmute.
Oh,
I
okay.
can't unmute her.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You can see her saying
I
unmute.
know.
Oh,
There you go.
Great, thank you, I'm
Yep.
sorry. There was a project that we had talked about in the final budget. It was overlooked for consideration, and I just wanted to bring it to the attention of the town council. We've included some money this year for stormwater management to complete the New Road project, and this is a project I've been working on with Rick Malasky. And we have full engineering design ready to go for this project. We've been saving for it for several years with the capital reserve funds. And we have applied for a community development block grant. However, it is a project that would require matching funds from the town, and we've put in a budget request for $285,000. And it's something that either could, it could be funded through a bond issue, and that is one of the recommendations that is talked about in the separate memorandum that the CIP committee put together. And right now we're applying for the water portion of this project, and we should hear on November 5th whether we get the funding for that, which is about $500,000. But also we anticipate we'd apply for some additional community development block grant funds in January to be able to match that. So I guess the request is that the council consider putting that on the town warrant as a, so that we'd have bonding authority to move forward with the project. We also have a grant application into the Department of Environmental Services for that, and we have not yet heard whether or not that's going to be funded. But the goal is that all these funding sources are going to come together, so as of June 1st next year, we'll be able to move forward with that project, which has been in the planning stages for probably 3 or 4 years at this point.
So what will happen is if we receive notification that we're gonna be able to go forward with that, I'd come to the council and ask for bonding authority at that time. But for the operating budget, we haven't.
Okay, I just wanted to bring that
Yep.
to your attention. Thank you very much.
So,
Thank you.
Any changes?
Any other items, though? Sorry.
Oh,
For this year?
fire
that
truck.
you're-
We're gonna look at the network, for the computer network. We're finding a lot of old switches and hubs and replacement there.
Electrical work?
We have to look at electrical work, because a lot of this building still, I say it wrong, knob and tube, which is not good. So we need to look at that as well. But that's it. We're just trying to move forward with some of the projects we do have. I guess my only question is, I know the council in the past has overridden my budget and increased the road paving line. Is it the wish of the council to increase the contribution to the roads by $50,000? Or do you want to keep it at $200,000 as I recommended? I don't usually throw that out there to second guess my budget, but I will let you do that. My concern is, like I said, we just won't have the matching revenues this year, so that's why I did it. Okay.
I'll throw my 2 cents in.
Yeah.
So, I was waiting. I didn't see any hands shoot up, but I think that every that we put into our roads for maintenance and the money that we put up front is worth so much. For when we start to delay things, we see just the cost go up exponentially. So I'm always in favor of increasing our roadway budget.
Do you mind if I ask? I know that we had a pretty good deal on road repaving. Costs are we still looking at that going into the next year? Or?
Yes.
Right.
Oil, as long as oil prices remain low, paving remains, costs remain low.
All right.
If that's the case, then does it make sense to do the paving while the price is low?
That's what I'm wondering.
Yes.
is.
Yes.
So should we maybe do the extra 50 grand with the road work now?
I'm certainly in favor of it.
I would be as well.
Okay, so council budget now is $250,000.
Everyone's okay.
Can I just say one other thing too? I'm just glad that, I know it's probably not gonna be funded anytime soon, but that there is a new skate, board park, at least in the, you know,
The plans.
distant, future, because I don't know if anyone else has noticed, there's been a serious increase in the number of skateboarders in town with the pandemic, and, I look forward to them having a new home someday in the, some future.
Okay. Any other questions on capital reserves?
I just had one question
Sure.
about the football field. Is that artificial turf or real grass?
Football field?
There was a thing in here for a new, almost $1 million for in the future, football field in the school portion.
Oh,
I didn't,
It's a
to be honest, I
sports
didn't look
fields.
at the.
we don't look at,
I
yeah.
didn't look at the school portion.
I was just, so we wouldn't know whether that was, okay, so I could ask them.
Yeah,
Okay.
yep. Okay. I want to take this opportunity to thank the CIP committee for all their hard work and look forward to working with them in the future. And before we go to the library, I'm going to ask Diane to come back on so we can do the planning department. Diane? Okay. Well, planning, we're seeing a increase of $15,063 or 11%. The main areas are in, why is mine not working?
Sorry, what page is planning on? I lost.
I'm sorry,
track of where we
I have my spreadsheet.
That would be
Thank you.
36.
Oh, thank you. I was not close to that.
Is under contracted services.
Yeah, I was flipping around here too, he's just going like right through here. and I'm
Yeah,
like, where the
36.
heck are we? Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
So contracted services, we're gonna have a lot of more reviews of ordinances. You know, we discussed that in the joint meeting, and they requested additional funding, so we did place that in there, and we think that is the area that we could do so. Other than that, I mean, it's pretty, advertising is, the cost of advertising for meetings still goes up. We still have to publish those in newspapers. And everything else is basically operational costs. Any questions? Diane, you're still muted. You're muted. I guess.
Sorry, with the advertising, you said that's in general what it costs for the newspapers?
Oh, she's
Yeah,
back.
there's Diane. Diane's here.
But you're not allowing me, I can't get on.
You're on.
You're on now.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Been on.
Okay, yeah, we do, everything we do for planning board and zoning board applications, we need to notify the abutters. That's a nominal fee. Of course, we recoup those costs through our application fee. But what we're finding in particular, that the newspaper advertising has gone sky high. And we're finding that in some cases, it's double what it has been in years past. And partly it's because they're charging us now for the cost of internet advertising. So there is quite a jump this year, but as you see, last year our figures were in line with what we're recommending this year for funding. Did that answer your question?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Were there other questions? I'm sorry.
Nope.
Okay,
I think
thank
we're
you very much.
all set with planning.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You, have a nice weekend.
Too.
Bye.
I am now going to ask, Carrie, are you there?
I am.
Okay. Are you expecting any trustees, or just going to be you?
Amy is on here.
Okay.
Amy Nicholson, she's the chair.
Okay.
What page is the library? Oh, I found it.
Library.
Behind you. Page 59.
I'd ask Amy and have the video, or if she just wants to participate by phone only. Amy, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Thank you. So library on page 59. They are seeing an increase of $7,799 or 2%. If you look at it, a good portion of it's a health insurance and salaries, but they're all in utilities. There's not a lot of new programming. And Carrie, you want to highlight it, or?
Sure. One of the bigger increases is in the oil and electric. And that's because I didn't understand with this new project when they did all the Ethernet, so they could do the remote control for the climate on the HVAC system, that we had to keep the budget at 12,000, which is what it was at the year that was done. So when we replaced the boiler 4 years ago, we were doing really well on oil and electric. And so as we were using the savings in other areas, and I didn't realize it had to stay in those lines. So that's why that's up $5,000 between the two. And then the other, we did combine 2 part-time positions, but you do see a big difference between FY 2020, what we spent on part-time salaries, and what is in that line. But that is because when the virus hit in March, we had one person who is almost full-time cut back her hours drastically, almost to nothing. And then another, the children's librarian cut back. So that's why there's such a difference there. But the full-time person is back working. And I think, when the virus is over, of course, we'll need our children's librarian. She'll increase her hours again. Other than that, there aren't really any changes in the budget. We've been doing window service, which has been working well. People place all their requests online or call in. And we have plans to open in the next few weeks to allow people in by appointment. And we're going to continue the window service for those who don't feel comfortable coming in. And people can walk in too, but we'll have just 8 people in the library at a time. And in the meantime, the trustees, we decided to move ahead with repairing the plaster and painting. Trustees voted to take the funds out of their trust funds. The meeting room has been totally repaired. The plaster is done. It's been painted. It looks great. And next week, the whole circulation area is going to be started. The plaster repair and painting of the whole circ area. Because there'll be staging involved. We thought it'd be a good time to do it now. And as soon as that's done, that's when we'll open to the public. We were doing really well till March. Circulation was up, and then of course, like everybody else, everything just kind of came to a standstill. So if you have any questions.
Carrie, can you just take a second? We have a couple new counselors, and can you explain a little bit sort of the way the funding works? Because you mentioned the trustees, and there's the Friends of the Library. So can you just talk a little, we have, obviously we have this budget, but then there are these separate entities. Right. Can you just talk a little bit about that to explain it?
Yep. So the budget before you is our operating budget. Which is basically what we use to totally run the library, the salaries, the programs, the services, the facility. Then the trustees have money that has just been saved and built up over time, and they have control over that money. They vote to spend that. And then, of course, we have our CIP like everybody else. So those are our 3 pots of money, so to speak.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And just for the council's knowledge, you only have bottom line authority over their budget. So that's why we put them in the special revenue fund, because we don't have a real other place to put it. they have the authority to expend their funds as need be, because they're by library law. The trustees oversee the operation of the library. It's an old law to make sure that the elected officials don't censor what kind of books and the operations of the library. We're unique that our library was founded as a mill library and was turned over, so we do not have elected library trustees. They're appointed by the council, because when the library was turned over by the mill owners at that time put in the stipulation that they must be appointed by the Board of Selectmen at the time, which turned into the town council. So that's why you appoint trustees. But when you see my budget, I just take their budget and recommend it to the council, and the council has authority over the bottom line.
Questions for Carrie?
I just wanted to, not a question, but just a statement. I just want to thank you for the great work you guys have been doing during the pandemic. I'm a frequent library window customer, so I really appreciate how you guys have pivoted. You've done a really great job.
Well, thank you so much. We appreciate that. The staff is great. We all miss you too. We're looking forward to when people can come back into the library.
And your website has been such a great resource for a lot of different things, but certainly for all things COVID related, for things voting related. I mean, it's just been, I use it all the time. It's been fantastic. So it's a great source of information, as I suppose the library should be. So I've appreciated that.
Oh, thank you. I will pass that on to the person who helps me with the website.
Any other questions for the library?
Great.
Thanks, Carrie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the next one we're going to go to is Public Works Administration. We're going to have a number of Public Works different budgets, but in fire. So we're going to begin at page 44. I am recommending a budget of $514,746, which is the department's requesting $500,246. I made reductions in overtime and in, I think that was the only difference was overtime and some other small things, but nothing. Most of the reason labor salaries are up just because of salary increases. Overtime, we've been doing a number of projects in-house. For example, the Bay Road Bridge, they did that in-house. Working on the dam, we've been able to provide our labor, which sometimes overtime increases that. And I know the director tries to schedule people differently, but sometimes overtime is a necessity.
When we work with these outside contractors, they work 10-hour days, and we work at 8. But we save a lot of money by, you know, it looks like we're spending more money in overtime, we're really saving a lot of money doing what we're doing, at the end of the day.
And as you can see, we're trying to budget to actual, because I mean, last year we spent $73,000 on a $50,000 budget. That's why I did increase it to 60.
Is that enough? I mean, do we foresee projects like?
It is, if we have a decent winter, but we're due, but like we and Steve had a conversation the other day, because he looks at it.
That was a polite way
Me
to
and
say
Bill
it.
are on the same page.
I look at the entire budget. You look at a
I
department
think
budget.
we should be budgeting like it's gonna snow all winter, like it should.
Right.
So and then we just give it back to the general fund, because then when it does, and we don't have enough, I have to try to find it and not do other things, that's all.
We've never had a situation where we've not been able to find the money in the budget.
But we don't do something.
we don't do something, but yes. I try to budget more towards actual than to potential. So.
But in a typical year, I guess my question is, so like the 73 is reflective of some of these extra projects.
This was
Correct.
from the projects, not
Right.
so much the winter, because last year
Right.
we didn't have much snow.
Right. So with the typical year with overtime, like what's
About
our
60.
average? Okay, so about.
Yeah.
Which
Okay.
I budgeted 60.
Okay.
But if
May
it
I
snows
ask
a
a
lot, Steve's gonna be wrong. So,
But if it snows a lot and we have winter events, we also get FEMA funding for blizzards. if a disaster is declared, so we are all set there as well.
Could I ask a question to the Public Works Director?
Yeah.
Rick, do you mind if I ask, you say assume that it snows with budgeting, how do you, like, calculate that? Do you like do, is it like a per day in terms of cost that it snows, or,
It
like, how do
really-
you visualize
The
that?
big thing is picking up downtown,
Yeah,
so you assume you're gonna do that 12 times.
okay.
Last year, I think we did it once.
It-
So that you can,
Just to
you can
put it
like
in perspective.
visualize a cost for that every time you have to go down 12 times.
Right, and understand,
Okay.
we prefer snow over
Ice.
ice. Ice costs us more than snow does.
Especially in product.
Yeah,
Thank you.
And last year we had more ice events.
We had a lot of ice.
You're not worried that it snowed like a week ago up north?
no. Because it's still 50, 60 down here in October, so
It's a lot of snowflakes in the forecast
Yeah.
for Jackson, just saying.
that's different than down here. So that's the Public Works Administration. It's a 6% increase. The next page is road work. I think there's actually the department had requested a $500,000 budget. I reduced that to $455,900. Places I reduced was engineering down to $25,000. Winter equipment rental due to actual to $7,500. The $12,000 was that one freak year when we had 3 blizzards. Again, it could happen. Is it likely to happen? Well, we didn't think a pandemic was going to happen, but who knows? But we'll deal with it if that comes up. So that is the main difference between mine and the department's.
And then the salt, you trim the salt down Tuesday.
Salt, yeah, I'm sorry. I think there's if I look, I think there's an error on the formula, because it's not a 20% increase. I think Bill sees this too.
Yep. I
Okay,
see it.
so I apologize for that percentage difference.
On what, Steve? I'm sorry.
There's an
Oh,
error
the end,
in,
the bottom.
yeah,
Was that error that 90,000 mark?
Yep.
the formula, there's an error in the formula. We'll have to check that, I apologize.
Could I ask a question?
Yep.
Yeah, on salt, I know that the Department of Environment is pushing all kinds of alternatives to salt. And, which I don't remember what they are, but I remember they're, vegetable oil or something. I don't know. Are they cost effective?
To be totally honest, salt's the cheapest way, and that's why everybody's still using it. The other stuff, it doesn't work as good. You have to put more out. There's really nothing else out there, to be totally honest, that works.
salt's still the-
They try to say they're doing the right thing with it, but it's not cost effective. It really isn't.
Any roadways and sidewalks? Okay, seeing none. Streetlights. We are seeing a 13% increase. It is due to interest on our lease that we have for streetlight replacements and energy. Correct, Bill?
Yes.
Okay. You have the streetlights, yep.
And the new lights are really great.
Yeah.
No issues when we went to the LED.
When we went to LED, it's a,
There was always issues with the other ones.
Are they dark sky lights?
yes. So if you look at it, when it used to, you see the light pollution above,
Yeah.
now it's just aimed down because of its LED. Yep. When we were doing this, I had a meeting with the company, they're out of Dover, and what they did is they pointed out, we're up in there, it's in the mill, so you're up above, and you can see downtown. They said, notice the streets in downtown, the lights aimed to the street, but if you look at a private property, they have the old lights, the lights are going up too.
Yeah.
And you go, so there's a big difference. Okay, the next page, bridges. I funded it at $5,000. Department head wanted $9,000. I can let him make his case.
That's guardrail replacement from a lot of the stuff around. Some of the stuff's pretty old, and we just, every year we replace a little bit more.
So they just won't be replacing as many guardrails.
No safety concerns?
What's
Or
that?
No immediate safety concerns, just stuff that
No,
we wanna have?
we're just trying to kind of steadily do it.
Okay.
That's,
Okay.
Um,
Yes.
I have a question that we didn't really get to. Any sidewalk, construction that we are foreseeing, or no?
we're gonna be going up the finished Bennett Way.
We are.
We're gonna get that connected.
Next year?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. The next page, buildings and grounds. We're seeing an increase of $55,000. You can see mainly we're getting much more accurate with our budgeting for utility costs. We're doing it to actuals now. This budget could significantly change if the council adopts the resolution for the memorandum of understanding that I have on the agenda for the next meeting. The reasoning is currently the position of facilities director is under the town budget. The memorandum of understanding requests that it will be switched to the school. It would be a school employee. Well, I would not reduce it by 100% because there's other things that we'd be looking at that could make a reduction at that point in time. However, I would go forward with this budget as is, just because we don't know final negotiations and everything.
How significantly, oh, sorry.
From the standpoint of a taxpayer, that makes no difference.
No.
You know.
And what we do is we reduce this expenditure because we're gonna also lose that revenue. What a salary is, what's the salary you estimating, about 150?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Including benefits.
Yep.
All up, all in. But on the flip side, as I said,
All right.
we're gonna lose the revenue on the school side because now we're receiving a revenue to pay for their portion. They're gonna keep it, we're gonna have to pay them on the other side for our share of the facilities director, as well as looking at our current staffing in-house.
So that would be under contracted services or something like that?
We would have to
We
transfer the
change it.
funds from salaries to contracted services. But it's still in there for now. Look at yourself.
So in the end, we're still gonna be paying, it won't be that much different.
No,
Our cost is gonna be the
our,
same.
our cost is almost exactly the same.
It's
We,
just this number.
we lose a revenue
Right.
and and
So this number changes.
the expense doesn't happen,
Okay.
so. I mean, I have to say that we have been addressing buildings and facilities issues very well the last few years. I mean, when I first got here, we addressed them because we had to, because things were literally falling down, versus now we're addressing it for the long term and making plans, so I'm very happy with our investment in that. Questions?
I wanted to just make a couple of comments about, along those lines. So, for anybody who is, we had entered into an agreement, what's it called? Performance contract, situation with energy efficiency investments 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years
2,
ago?
3, yeah.
And so that was to upgrade some of our systems, and the saving, so lighting, heating, that sort of stuff. And it's reflected in this budget, which is why I'm bringing it up now. And so the savings is that we saw or are seeing in those upgrades is what's paying for the upgrades themselves. So it's basically like a loan. Am I
Yep.
describing it accurately?
Yes.
And so some of these numbers, we've done, I think, incredible improvements to HVAC systems and, transferring to LED lights and controls over the lighting and the heating, solar panels on the Public Works building, insulation, those types of items that have, they're not, I think bottom line, we're still paying probably about the same amount because that's how we funded the projects, but saving energy. So we had a meeting just this past week to go over some of the preliminary numbers, and we're going to get regular updates from the company that we're working with to understand those savings. And so even though, like, again, it's not necessarily reflected in the bottom line, I think that we are certainly using less energy, and so it's reflected in our overall consumption, which I think is huge. So I appreciate all the work that goes into, that has gone into setting that up. And, we had Greg on board for a long time, who was a really kind of an advocate of that program, and the work that the Buildings and Grounds has done to make sure that that's happened, and the work that you've done, Bill and Steve. So it's just been, I think, a great opportunity for our town.
Great. Next budget is cemeteries. We're seeing an increase of $5,451. They are purchasing a new lawnmower. That's mainly it. Vehicles. We're seeing a reduction of $19,000. I'm proposing a reduction of $19,000. Fuel. We had a level budget, but understand that fuel, where we started this budget, has dropped significantly. And as long as the pandemic is in place, fuel prices are going to be low. We don't see any huge increases in fuel prices, so I budgeted to more to actual and reduce those lines for gasoline and diesel. As well as equipment maintenance, I did it to actual, which was $65,000, which was an increase over the previous year.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm not gonna advocate change, but I would just like to say, fuel prices can change rapidly.
Absolutely, we know that.
All right, just as long as it's,
One hurricane could knock us off.
yeah, and that's kind of my fear.
Yep, we know that. Okay, so it's vehicles. So the next budget, I'm going to ask the fire chief to come forward.
Do you wanna do solid waste or do fire?
Oh, let's do solid waste first. I'm sorry.
61.
We're seeing an increase of $116,790. I could tell you that the market out there for solid waste is horrible. There's no recycling market due to China not taking any material. So you've actually seen municipalities stop recycling, which I don't recommend. And the hauling fees from Waste Management. The other problem is we're running out of spaces to put it. So every time you hear of a landfill closing or not getting its permit, we pay for it. I think Bethlehem's going to be closing shortly, which will have a huge impact, because then we're just down to basically Rochester as the only place in the state we can haul waste to. So, it's one of those things that when it looks great when you hear somebody not doing a landfill, but you have to put it somewhere. And this is what we're running into. And Rochester, I believe, is looking at expanding, but I don't think they're going to get much out of it.
Sorry.
Do you have something you want to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about the household hazardous waste real quick.
Sure,
It's-
please.
It's in here again because we should do it every year. We've gotten to the point where we can't do the every other year.
Yeah.
We're too big a community for that. So I think we need to do it every year, so it's in there.
And do you, that leads, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna ask, when Rochester fills up, where to next?
Good question.
Do we have out-of-state options for those?
We don't know.
Okay. Are there more opportunities that we have to, because I know like we're doing Mr. Fox for composting right now, is there anything else that we can continue to start?
Those items help, it's just we're not at the level of getting rid of solid waste. I am going to be proposing shortly an increase in bags that we charge. We need to do that to offset. We haven't increased in a number of years, and I did a survey where some of the bags we charge for are well below. I know City of Dover had their first bag increase due to the new contract, and it's significant. And that's what you're gonna see a lot of communities.
I just had a question about composting, and if you have heard any talk of any of the big, Bestway or any of these companies getting into composting, because it seems like an obvious way for us to lower our municipal waste costs. But I know obviously they're not doing it now. I don't know if there's been any talk or anything.
There's been no chatter.
No, none of them are gonna do it, okay. Cause I mean, I don't think Mr. Fox would obviously hold all
Yeah.
could handle all of our compost for our town, but it would obviously save us significantly if they could.
And you would need a game changer to force people to compost. Well, the only reason why we had a game changer in recycling is it cost, when we started charging for the paper bag system, people realized the incentive of not throwing their recyclables in their garbage was it was gonna cost them less. So there has to be some kind of game changer to do that, besides just the current people who do it,
Yeah.
so.
Well, and it's curbside pickup.
Right.
I think that's that's a big deal, as opposed to, like if you wanna compost now, you have to bring it to the transfer station.
Right.
And it's, not a lot of people wanna do it,
Yeah.
so, I mean, but enough are, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's my
Yeah.
question, yeah.
We're up to 3 bins now, we were only doing 2.
Could a town
Oh.
not simply,
I think the increase in the bag price may be an incentive for more people to use the composting.
Absolutely.
We're a family of 5, and we've gone from 2 bags a week to 1, and some weeks it's not even a full bag.
Wow.
So it makes, if you eat a lot of fruits and vegetables, it makes a huge difference. So that might encourage additional people to even do it.
I was gonna say, we do the same thing, we just do backyard compost, so it's fewer things than could go to Mr. Fox, and even so, we're 4 people and we're down to 1 bag a week max, the small bag. So it's huge.
Counselor Dumont, did you?
I'm actually gonna hold this one.
Okay.
I'm good.
I do have a question about the contract, and so what numbers? So is this a new contract, or is
It was
this
an
just?
extension for 1 year, we're gonna go out to bid
Right.
again this year.
So
but this
we
is-
are potentially.
We could potentially be over,
Yeah, it's significant.
Yes.
So what other communities are seeing is,
And Steve, we used to be with Newfields and Stratham, we're on our own now.
right,
We don't have that group.
right, do we have well, that would be reflected in the next budget, okay. Yeah, it's scary to me,
we're
I'm
doing
not gonna
1-year
lie.
agreements
Yeah.
for a reason, it's not
Yeah,
we're afraid to see what the big one would be if you do it 3 years out.
Yeah, you might wanna extend it again.
Yeah, to do a 1 year, yeah.
right, yeah.
I have a question about recycling.
Sure.
It's maybe an obvious, I don't know. But, so I know, we all know that there's no market for people purchasing recycling, so what are we doing with all of it? Is it just being stored currently?
A lot of it is, I mean, coincidentally, last year I took a tour of Waste Management. They hold it like a commodities market, once it's open, they can do it. Yeah, a lot of it's just being stored up there, it's not being buried,
Sure,
but it is being stored.
it's kind of at some point though,
They're gonna have to figure that out too,
yeah,
yeah.
okay.
It was an interesting tour up there, and they explained, basically the Chinese market's not there, and that's where you sent everything. Unless somebody comes up with something. Yeah.
We don't have a lot of those, I don't know what the term is, but the people who use the products here. Like, it
Right.
was just all being shipped, and so I think that the hope is that some of that market will change, and, some innovation, I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
But, people will start producing end products from, the glass and the plastics, but, I mean, obviously, a big part of that is making sure that we recycle correctly,
Yes.
and, continuing to get information out to the community, because what happens is if there's contaminated,
Yeah.
and that means different things, but contaminated recycling, then, the whole bundle then that does get put into a landfill, because it's not, acceptable. And that could be because of people put plastic bags in the recycling, you know, like it's stuff like that.
It's interesting too, and this was just brought to my attention this week. I think people are, because typically the small bags just went to the single person, and we've noticed the small bags are going out more than they were. And I think it's because people are, like the 4-person household and 5 are using the small bag now instead of the large. It's interesting. Jan's like, hey, just so you know, the smalls are going out a lot more all of a sudden. It wasn't typically the case, you know. If you got the small bag, you were a single person living alone. I think that's the reason. I think it's because people are doing that.
So people are
That's good.
trying to recycle, but possibly recycling incorrectly, and that's increasing the amount of recycling
Yeah.
they're putting out. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm just saying they're
Yeah.
instead of using a large bag now, they're using a small bag.
Right.
For the composting.
They're composting or whatever
Okay.
Yeah.
When we went to the municipal conference and we had the municipal waste discussion, that the contamination was their biggest key point, is that it basically destroys their machines and takes them out of service for several days at a time to pull them all apart and fix them again.
Yep.
You wouldn't really think that one plastic bag could do that much, but when it's a million plastic bags.
Right. Or Christmas lights, you
Yeah,
know,
God.
and then like the pizza boxes, like that's a big one, because it's
Yeah.
the oil contamination, and so then that's not, you know, clean for the markets, so.
Okay. Fire chief. Fire department. See an increase of $31,583.
51.
Okay, back.
Thank you. Mainly, as I mentioned, is the part-time salaries. We've been doing the stipend system for on-call on the weekends, because we're having some issues with response time on weekends. This has solved it. It's really been helping. The only other major changes that I made are in the area. He requested $35,000 for equipment. I went to $25,000. We do this every year. And I think that's about it.
What are you trying to buy with that extra $10,000?
The radios, everything, the radios, we have 45 portables, so you try, and they're expensive, so we tried to buy 5,
Yeah.
6 a year. So we just buy what we can.
Any question on fire? That's it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So next, in our final 2 budgets,
Oh.
are water and sewer. So I asked Sean to come up once.
What page is that?
That is on 62 and 63.
Thanks, Rick.
There's an increase of $36,835 or 4%. It's mainly in salaries and chemicals. We had, the department did a salary survey. We were having some issues with attracting staff, and after looking at the salary survey, we were underfunding some of the positions, so we did correct that this year. That all came from their budget, so it was fine, but now you're seeing it reflected in the salary line. And chemicals, Sean, just,
Well, the big thing is for when you look at the chemicals and you look at electricity, the new treatment facility will be coming online next year to treat the water at the McIntosh well, which will be removing the arsenic, because the new arsenic standard went from 10 to 5. So we're mandated to actually do that. It's also going to remove manganese, which is not something that's regulated yet, but is regulated in Massachusetts and Maine and other states. So I do see that coming down the line. That's why you're actually seeing the major increases for chemicals, electricity.
and you're seeing the interest payment on the bond that was issued last year for $37,418.
If I may, I'd just like
Yes.
to use the time to point out what a great job our water department does. Also, congratulations on not finding any of the PFAS, PFOA,
Yeah.
any of the bad stuff. We're really fortunate to have such a well-working system here.
Especially during a pandemic, because water is important for
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
washing and cleaning and doing whatever you need to do.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Could I ask a question that, I don't know if it's budget or not, but I'll ask it in a budget format. We don't fluorinate the water. What would be the budget implications of, I mean, we have a lot of young children in Newmarket. And that's, you know, I think it's pretty scientifically proven that fluorination would be really beneficial for little kids.
I think, I do not know what the exact cost is. I do know that it takes quite a bit of equipment and it's very difficult to do.
Oh, really?
For us to do it, for the blending and the mixing of it.
So it's not just like a little dosing thing?
No.
It's a dosing, it's also, you can mix it to make it, and so it's, and then you add it, and there's issues with, you know, most water systems do not do it.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Yes.
back in
Dover
the.
does it.
Dover
No.
does do it.
Do they do that?
Yeah.
Yes, Dover has,
Because they had to offer the water to Rollinsford and other towns.
they may have switched, I have
Okay.
not been there, and in the past they have.
So what happened was when they started fluoridating water, I believe it was a case out of Dover, that so Dover decided to do so, but they also provided water to those municipalities, and those municipalities didn't agree to it, so they had to stop it because they had to provide it. There's some laws that would actually, I think it has to go on the ballot now to fluoridate the water, so that people have to vote for it, even, no matter if you're a city or a town, which is a rare thing. Yeah, it was a big fight.
It's a controversial.
It's a very controversial issue.
Yes.
I thought the same thing. You never think it would be a controversial issue. Fluoridating your water is a hugely controversial issue.
Well, as
See
you
it.
know, wearing masks.
Yeah.
Right? So scientifically proven,
Yeah.
very controversial.
Yeah.
Could I add a budget item to say, to find out what it would cost to fluorinate water?
I would think we would do that
We can do it
separately.
in-house.
That would be something separately.
Yeah, we can do. We don't need to add money for that.
No, that's something I can do separately.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, you know, I'd like to know what it would cost, and I think it would be, I mean, our job is to make the town better, right? And so, one of the qualities of betterness is people moving into the town versus people leaving. And I think a fluorinated water system would be very attractive to people that have young children.
I think the biggest thing you're gonna see is that we're gonna have to probably expand the size of our buildings to add on, to put the adequate things in for fluoridation.
Okay,
Which could be quite expensive. That's what I'm, just initially what I would say to look
Yeah.
at. It's something we can look at, and I can respond back to the council once I get that information, but I don't need to add that into the budget.
Okay, yeah, I'd personally be really interested in
And
knowing
I guess I would
Back
look,
of envelope.
what the magnitude of it would be.
Yeah.
This isn't a big study. This is a back of envelope kind of
yes,
study.
yes.
And then we'll go from
absolutely.
there and
Yeah.
ask the council for
No.
guidance after.
Order of
Yes.
magnitude.
Yes.
Right, because I think that you'd probably find that, I think that there would be a lot of different opinions
Yeah.
on that,
Yeah.
and whether or not that's the way we want to spend our money, like, just from a budgetary perspective.
I can come
Not,
up
not a,
with,
you
yeah,
know,
I can come up with that number pretty,
yeah.
it'll, in a few, probably about 3 or 4 weeks.
Oh, great, okay.
And I can report back in the council meeting.
I will get that to you.
Thanks. What's the water budget? And remember,
Right.
water is, these are all paid by the ratepayers, so this has no impact on the tax rate.
The one thing is I did decrease the capital reserve line item, and the reason I did that is because we're doing $12 million in projects right now. That line will need to increase once the water facility comes online because of our agreement and receive funding from funding organizations. We are supposed to create a capital improvement plan to replace the equipment within those facilities in a timely manner and put money aside for that.
So
Yeah,
next,
Could I ask one more question?
yeah,
So Steve had presented to us a gateway project plan, an expansion, one of the gateway expanding the town. And one of the things that he showed was extending the water system to the west, I guess
Yep.
they call it the West Gateway. Right? Are you familiar with that?
I am a little bit familiar
Okay,
with it,
so
yes.
what would be the implications of adding all those people to the water system?
I couldn't tell you. It would not be the right thing to do for me to think right off the top of the head.
Right.
I think that would be something that the council would ask me to do, or Steve would ask me to do, and I could get that back to you.
And when we're there, we would probably do that study, because we'd have to look at either doing impact fees or service charges or bonding that at that point in time, but until we had the development out there, we wouldn't.
I think that they gave us a number.
It was
at
about
the
2
first-
million.
I think it was 1.5 or 2 million.
Yeah.
I think they said there was a ballpark per mile or something.
That was,
Yeah,
I
was
think
just
we did
wondering
ballpark.
if that would
and-
require expanding the facility, et cetera, then maybe fluorination at the same time would make a lot of sense.
I don't think we'd have to expand the facilities, I think
I
we'd
think
just
the
connect.
biggest thing is it's probably better to discuss this at a later time, or maybe
Yeah.
you come down, because I think we've actually done a 20-year build-out study,
Oh, okay.
which identifies the water needs for the next 20 years and sewer needs for the next 20 years for the community. So I think that's where you would start.
All right.
Wastewater?
Yep.
Wastewater. Increase of 2% or of, again, I think there's an error on the formula.
It is 2%.
Yeah,
It's 2%.
but I'm just looking at the proposed department head difference. I've no change, but he's recommending, but if you look at the department head difference, it's 944,000. Mine's only 56, but it's the same number.
Yeah, there's
So
a number issue on,
there's a
And again, this is paid by ratepayers. right?
Yeah,
correct.
the only changes again, salaries are 22,000 of that. 12,000 in retirement, which we mentioned earlier. Electricity,
Well, electricity, we had a problem with the meter, the electrical meter. For the first 2 years, we actually underpaid. Their meter was reading incorrectly, and all of a sudden, the bills were coming in a lot higher, and I actually had to figure out why that was happening. And we have a monitoring system for electricity as part of our SCADA system, which is a surveillance system of our process and what's going on. And our surveillance system was actually reading correctly for the electricity. So we actually didn't pay what we should have been paying. Now we are paying the correct amount. I did think when we first went online, when I actually saw the electrical bills, that the facility was doing unbelievable. and I was right. But the good thing is they did not back charge us.
Oh, that's good.
wow.
We're just going ahead because they couldn't back charge us because the meter. I mean, that's their meter, it's not our fault. So, but now I've had to bump up electricity because of that, what happened.
Darn.
So it took us a bit to figure it out.
Mind if I ask just a quick question? Have you had any pushback or heard any complaints in terms of water rates? Because obviously we do our graduated build up.
Well, I'm sure people aren't happy, but we actually, I want to say, when Steve came in, we actually proposed what we were going to do. We said everything we were going to do. When we put it on our website,
Yeah.
people aren't happy with them, but I mean, we've been pretty transparent on where they were going and what's going on with them.
Just
So,
curious.
yeah.
And those increases continue obviously increases will continue, but the schedule, because for the wastewater in particular.
For the wastewater, we've actually extended it out, so it's been longer, and we've gone with some smaller increases. But we're looking at least 3 more years of increases of 60 cents per year for the wastewater. We need to get up around $13.80 or $14 per 100 cubic feet. And currently, we are at 12. So right now, we are still deficit spending, but not to worry, it's all planned. So we're okay right now.
And that's something that comes before the council every year, and so we approve those rates based on that plan that was presented
Correct.
6, 8, to whenever that was.
It was a long
100
time
years
ago. It was a long time ago. One thing I do want to talk about is sludge disposal. We have a year and a half left on our contract, which we generate about 700 tons of solids that get trucked out, which is something I'm working on with Steve. That is an issue because that goes to the landfill right now. And we need to figure out the cost and how to reduce those costs. The department has worked on a couple pilots on some systems to reduce those costs, which I'm just about ready to bring in front of the town council to show how it could help the town. But that is one of the biggest concerns confronting the wastewater department in the next couple of years. Actually, it's gonna be going on. And then also the issue is that, you know, ours has a little bit in it, it has the PFAS in it.
Yeah.
So that's a big issue that's gonna be confronting the town coming up soon.
We all know what sludge is, right?
It's the byproduct of the process
wastewater
from
plant.
the wastewater plant.
Okay.
We
Yeah.
just use the term sludge.
Yeah.
Great time to plug it. If you haven't toured the facility, you should go check it out.
I'd be very interested in that.
I don't think I've been since the new facility's been online.
Yeah.
To go.
So-
I think there's a
Need a
plaque with your
tour.
name on it down there.
What's that?
I think
Your
there's a
name's
plaque
on
with
it.
your name on it down there. You haven't
Your,
been?
your name's on it.
And my plug is if anybody wants a tour of the water or wastewater facilities, just let us know and we're more than willing to take you through and answer all the questions you could possibly have. The wastewater facility is a very technical run facility now. It's not just
Yeah.
a, black box where you throw, the water comes in and it comes out clean. And I'll plug in my personnel, they're top notch, they're some of the best in the state. And you can brag about that we're beating all the local area communities in discharge of nitrogen right now by a far cry.
Fantastic.
So,
Is there any potential for methane extraction and
No.
reuse?
no, we used to do methane for the old wastewater treatment plant, we are not big enough. You need to be over 1 million gallon a day plant to be
Wow.
big enough to generate enough methane to
To make it
capture
worth it,
and
yeah.
make it worthwhile.
Counselor Sanders, did you?
I was just wondering if it might be helpful, though, if several of us did want to go, if we came at the same time.
One or two at a time is fine.
Okay.
We'll make the time. It's really important for people, we make the time so they can see what their investment is.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay, that wraps up the budget.
Wow.
All right.
The difference is
Sean.
$50,000, but what I'm gonna recommend is under revenues, we increase use of fund balance by $50,000. We can do that, right?
Sure.
As I throw them under the bus. So that way, the tax rate will remain what I recommended.
Okay,
So, 50's not a lot.
I gotta remember this
So-
now.
You'll find it.
You'll find it. So, all in, it'll be a tax rate of $6.51, or an increase of 19 cents over the previous year.
I wanted to, I don't know if you can just kind of give a brief explanation for how that process works, because again, we have the counselors for
Oh.
I don't know that everyone necessarily is
So-
super familiar with that process.
Right, and I've actually, from looking at the budget
We have
committee's
time.
agenda, I have to explain to them as well. Again, we do not operate as a town, we operate as a city. The council now will have a resolution on their next meeting to adopt the town budget, which has to be adopted by November 15th. If that's not adopted, then my budget goes to the budget committee, which would be a reduction of $50,000. But I assume you will adopt your budget. At that point in time, the budget committee then reviews it. I'll have a meeting sometime in March when I meet with them and go over the budget. They then adopt it and place it on the ballot in March, at which time does go into the traditional town meeting situation with deliberative session. We do not know what deliberative session will look like this year. We're trying to put that up front because of the current situation. The state's gonna look at it to see what we can do. But at that point in time, it'll be adopted, or not. And then if that happens, it's not adopted, then we go to default budget, which we are working on. Default budget, only the council approves that, does not go to the budget committee. So we'll have a resolution shortly that says this is our default budget. And that's it. Typically, the budget committee, I think I go 1 or 2 nights max.
I really can't envision this budget necessitating more than one meeting.
Yeah. So that's it. That's the process.
And what about the tax rate setting?
Oh, tax rate setting, we should be hearing shortly, I hope. This is behind on their number
Well,
setting.
They're behind on utility so far, anyway.
Right.
I haven't heard an update, but also we're behind too, and it's partly my fault, I guess. We have a 535 that we have to complete.
Which is revenues.
It's, yes.
No.
Well, no, revenues I did,
That's the audit.
434.
Yeah.
The 535 is basically our financial statements fit into their form. And I've been working with a CPA from outside. We did the same thing last year. And we've been having some difficulty getting everything to line up correctly and balance, basically. And we were racking our brains again late into yesterday, and some of it's just, and this isn't an excuse, it's the reality of the way Munis works and extracting data from Munis. So, anyway, we hope to have that completed very soon.
Munis is our financial software.
Right.
So what happened with tax rate setting is we put in a policy that we only use fund balance. We don't use it to offset tax rate, we use it as part of the budgeting process. So a lot of communities, what they do, which I would never ever recommend any municipality I've ever been in, is in October they start playing with their fund balance, say, oh, we're gonna reduce the tax rate by X amount. Well, what happens then is you don't have that money next year to officially inflate and then increase it. So we, as you see in your budget, there's a line that says use of fund balance. That's set, we don't change it. So we go to tax rate setting and it's done. And you're almost to the point where the tax rate you see here is what the value is gonna be within pennies, because we don't fool around with it. So that should be set shortly. Then the clerk runs a test warrant. I sign the warrant and we issue bills.
And that's something that did happen.
No, it
You
used
weren't
to.
it in
Yeah.
2010-ish?
Right before I started, we had an issue where we overexpended the fund balance, that we didn't have enough, to the point that operations were impacted to refill the fund balance. And that's when I first.
Tax rate shot up.
Tax rate shot up. One of the first things I did, we put an ordinance in that there's a fund balance ordinance that we must have between 5 and 10%. We're at 7 right now.
Yeah, I believe we did 7 this
Yep.
year, 7 or 8.
Yeah, so we're fine. And if we go below 5, we actually have to put a budget line item in to bring us back up to 5, which we have not gotten there yet, knock on wood. And our fund balances, we try not to do operations, we do it for capital items. So that's why you see a sort of a similar number between the contribution to capital reserve to the use of fund balance, because if we all of a sudden we don't have that fund balance, I don't contribute things to the capital reserve fund. So,
Great.
that's it.
Awesome.
Anything
Thank
else?
you.
Okay,
For me.
your next meeting is 2 weeks, November, right the day after the election.
Oh, dear.
So you'll have a late night and then you'll have this.
Oh,
We'll
gosh.
just stay over.
Just stay over.
We'll probably still be here putting ballots through.
Yeah.
Slumber party.
This, tomorrow, or not tomorrow, Monday, this coming Monday, yeah. Feels like tomorrow.
So that's
Seven
it.
o'clock? Or six, or,
Stephanie is here, and Wendy's
Yep.
okay.
Thank you, everybody.